Hello! This video is part of a free video series, which is my Blazor examples course, which has now been re-released for you to watch for free and to anyone, for anyone to enjoy it for free. Now, Blazor examples, we have 3 examples, therefore we have 3 videos. In one of them, we will take a look at a basic setup of a sort of privacy consent pop-up. Then the other one will be a look at a sort of a library, Blazor library, existing one. We will take a look at the code, we will take a look at how one gets published, and then we will take a look at a third example. Now, all 3 will contain somewhat different parts of Blazor, where we will explore proper implementations of everything. We will explore different styles, and I think that is a very good way to gain some quick experience with Blazor. And with that said, let's jump into that. Hello, in this lecture we'll start looking at the country picker. So country picker may seem like a boring example, but it is a live one and it is a library. That's the special thing about it. It is a Blazor library. It is actually called a Razor library because it's Razor syntax, right? But it is basically how we would create Blazor libraries. We can have Blazor components and all that other stuff Blazor related. So let's take a look at it. In this lecture, I'll just show you the main code, the general code, and then we will take a look at the publishing side of things. You do have to publish it via the Nuget, so I'll show you how that works. A little bit of a bonus for this Blazor example, okay? It is quite simple, but there are some tricky parts, so let's take a look now. We have Blazor app 1, which is Blazor application basically to test the library. Nothing more about it. It's very plain, very simple. It's just for sort of plain testing, okay? We go to index.razor. We have right here Blazor country picker implemented. We also have reference, okay, that's a component reference. It is kind of a useful thing. I don't think it's yet being utilized often. It might come to be that in the future. Okay, this is one of the major parts in this example, in this whole country picker library. Okay, now if we go into the library itself, it doesn't really have any kind of a styling. Okay, it's just some basic raw style, but it does need some style. You can't just do something like that with no style. It will make no sense at all. So let's see, we have Blazor country picker main container, right? Main container. So this is the main container, and we can now go into countrypicker.razor, which is the component right here. You see countrypicker.razor in Blazor country picker library. Okay, it's a library. So we have some styles. We have some styles right here. Country picker, and this is a whole thing. So this is the main sort of a box for it, right? And then we have a couple of more divs. This is the input, and these are the suggestions. Okay, I'll show you how all that works. First, we know where the classes are, where the style sheet is, right? And then to implement, of course, this is it can be quite tricky. What you need to do right here, this is now in the index.html. We have content, you see, underscore content slash, then the name for the library, and then the sheet, the style sheet, and the same would go for the JavaScript as well, if you didn't know that. It's something useful to know and to remember, as you probably can guess. If you just enter styles.css, it won't work. Okay, so it is quite important to actually remember this. Now then, before we get into the code, I want to just show you this project properties. Okay, properties, right? Application, you see it is .NET Standard 2.1. is .NET Standard 2.1. If I go to the solution, I'll show you where to find this kind of a project. If you don't already know, it is a bit tricky. So you go to New Project, okay, New Project, okay, and now we have C#, All Platforms, Web. We have Blazor app, of course, but you can also see Razor class library. Okay, so Razor class library is the project you need to choose if you want to do something similar. Now, I will turn that off. We won't be creating a new one. We already have a perfectly fine one already. Okay, and let's take a look at some code. I'll just turn that off and turn that off and turn that off so there's no distractions. Okay, and it's basically all in one component. Okay, it's not really refined. This is the very early version, and the reason I made it, I needed it for a couple of my own projects, a couple of my own platforms, and I didn't want to waste time copying code and then merging versions and doing two different things. So I just made a library, I made it public, everyone wins if someone uses it. Okay, it is available, of course, on Nuget, and I have provided the links in the resources to the whole code and to the Nuget, of course, as well. Hello again. I do hope you're enjoying this, and if you still need some more skills with Blazor, I would suggest my Blazor course, where you will go from A to Z with Blazor, everything from components, basic syntax, to handling WebSockets in Blazor, and much, much more. Also on Confusion Solution Learning Platform, you will be able to submit your assignments for my review. So it's not only seeing the task and the solution, but it's also submitting it for my review. I take a look at your code, I take a look at your solution, and I give you some tips and advice and all that stuff for your code, inside your code and outside your code as well. Do take a look at that. And now back to the course. So we have that. Now we have a class, and we have div and div. So first of all, we have the input. Okay, the input. Now, when you input the text, it binds. You see, it binds right away. It binds on input. So you don't have to click somewhere. You don't have to lose focus. It binds right away. That is what it makes, what makes it work. Okay, if you would have to click somewhere, lose focus, it wouldn't work. The suggestions wouldn't work, right? So it binds current country. Okay, current country is right here. Right, current country, right here. And then we have little if and loop cluster and a button. Okay, a button. Button, of course, has a class. Okay, we have item country. We have item country, and we have for each. So current country length is not 0. So if something is inserted, the suggestions will be looked up. If nothing is inserted, there's no point in doing that. You just won't find anything useful. So you insert one letter and it gives you a few suggestions. Okay, but the problem is, if you insert letter A, it will probably give quite a few suggestions, and it will make a mess of the page, right? That's not good as well. So then we have a for each loop, item, original list. Okay, original list. I'll show you that later. Then we have where, X country, to lower, contains, and all that stuff. And then we have take 5. So you see, we prevent any more than 5 results, and that keeps it all kind of uniform. Okay, now getting back to the original list. We have original list right here. We have current list and original list. So original list is basically the list that contains all the data about all the countries, and current list is basically the list that is sort of being displayed here. We don't actually use it here. Okay, we don't actually use it here because we do return it. We do return it from where, you see, where, contains and all that stuff, all these filters, and then 5. We simply return it, so we don't assign it anywhere. Okay, this is this particular variable, it's left for the later versions that might be needed. Okay, I won't get into that right now, but it might be needed. That is why it is here. Okay, so we have current country and original list. Those are the two things that we really need to look at. Okay, now what is this country model? This country model, okay, have JSON properties, something like that, right? We have code, country, year established, domain, ISO code, description. Many different things we have. And as you can see, we have the actual JSON string. Now you might say, why is it not in API of some kind? Why is it not a different file perhaps? Well, because if you have a different file, it will still take up space and you will still need to do that formatting. So I thought it would be easier to read if it was just a simple string. It would be less code. Obviously, it's a bigger line. It's a huge line here, line of code, but it really doesn't matter. Okay, you have it right here and then you deal with it. And you deal with it on initialize the sync. Okay, on initialize the sync. We have, actually, you can see right here, we have a sync keyword, okay, and we don't have return. You could remove a sync keyword and have return, okay. The plan was originally to insert some other asynchronous, await requiring method, task method, so that's why it was originally set like that. Again, the code isn't completely refined. It's one of those early stages. So let's see, we have on initialize the sync, right? Then we have current list. Okay, current list, we assign to that. Obviously, we don't use it, but it is assigned to that point. Okay, we assign that, and then we assign current list to the original list. Okay, quite simple, quite simple. And that is deserialize object, JSON convert, and we are using newtonsoft.json in this case. It's not the sort of default native JSON dealer, JSON manager, but it works well. It's a common option, Newtonsoft JSON. Okay, and then we have country model. Okay, so it is an array, as you can see. It's an array of country models. It's not a list in this case, right? We call it list, but it's not actually a list. It's an array. So we take the JSON string and we create a list or an array of these countries. Okay, and then we assign it to the original list with which we are working. We are dealing with it, right? We're dealing with the original list. So again, getting back to that for each loop. Okay, anytime current country will change, okay, anytime the current country will change, this loop will be reevaluated and then you'll get new suggestions. We filter that by the country name, okay, in that country model, which contains current country, okay. So it's kind of a exact filtering, okay. It's quite exact, okay. It's not like you can have a certain letter laying around in the word somewhere. It is kind of exact, okay. But that is how it works. And obviously, as I mentioned before, we take only 5 results. If there are more than that, they will not show up. And then we have a button. Okay, the button simply assigns the selection to the current country. It kind of makes it more beautiful. Otherwise, the country is assigned, and if you click submit, it will be some nonsense value. Okay. It will be some nonsense value, but not exactly necessarily, okay? If we go down to the bottom, there is sort of a second part to this whole thing, okay? There is second part. As you can see, we have retrieve section, but we will take a look at that in the next lecture, Okay, we will take a look at that in the next lecture. It is dealing with that reference thing, so there is something to talk about, and we kept this lecture quite long. So with that, we will conclude it and we will get back to it in the next one. Hello again, and excuse the interruption once again, but I do have a suggestion for you. If you want to improve your C# skills, if you want to learn something more advanced, why don't you take a look at my TCP, UDP and WebSockets course? In there, you will learn how to handle TCP, UDP and WebSockets in a very practical way. There's no drawings, no nothing like that, no theory. We're just looking at the client-side implementation and the server-side implementation of all these different sockets. It doesn't cost a lot, it won't take too much time, and you will have an advanced skill in your bag. And with that, let's get back to the course. Hello, in this lecture we will move on with the country picker and we will take a look at that retrieve section, at that retrieve region that we have. It is a bit vast, okay, and I will now open it up and I'll go through it. Okay, and first of all we have retrieve country code async. Basically these methods are all the same. Task method returning a string. Okay, it's just a matter of which string it will return. Okay, so what does it return? Okay, retrieve country code async. Now, when you post to a database, when you insert that new record, you do not want to insert the whole name of the country. The name, first of all, may vary from place to place, from picker to picker, but the country code will stay the same. The second and even more important thing is that a code, country code, is 2 characters, okay? It's 2 characters. Now the name, it might be 12, who knows how many it might be, so it would be a waste of space, okay? It's a complete waste of space to do that, so just pick the country code and move on to the database. Okay, now you see what it does. Does from result. Okay, so when you execute this method, from result returns, right? It's a task method, no async. That's why we need from result. Okay, and then original list first. Okay, first. Okay, country to lower. So it basically chooses that country which is selected. Okay, and then takes a code from that model. Now you may already notice a problem, a bit of a problem, right? There's a bit of a problem. You see, what will happen if the user, say, inserted USA instead of selected United States of America? So they will have in the current country USA, but country in the list will be completely different word if they don't click on that, if they don't choose that. So that is one of the flaws with this application. Okay, now by default it returns NA, okay, and you can handle it like that. So it will sort of work, but it won't work properly. Okay, it won't work properly. Now there are several ways to sort of fix that, okay, although this kind of a thing may be a fix as it is, okay, but first of all, let's see, we have code and then the other options are kind of the same. We have year established, okay, we have domain, the country domain, then we have another one ISO, so that's ISO code, and that's it. That's all we have from those regions, okay. That's what we have. But again, the problem everywhere is that if the current country is only written in, not selected, or is not exact as it is in the list, then it will fail. It will fail and it will return NA. Something is wrong. Now, there are probably ways to fix that, and we will actually take a look at that. So we will finish this little explanation, looking it up, and then we'll try to implement some sort of fixes on this code. Okay, very simple, nothing fancy, but it can't really be called a fix. It's just an addition to this whole thing, right? So we know how it's picked, we know how these retrieve methods are set, created, established. Now let's take a look at how they are executed. If you have seen before, there was the reference, okay? And reference is quite useful, but as I mentioned in the previous lecture, it's not utilized enough. For some reason, it's not being used, okay? But it is available. So you have reference, right? And then picker. And then right here you have country picker. So that's the razor.razor file used basically as a class. It is a sort of a class, a fancy class, C# class, right? So we have country picker, and that's the reference, okay? So whatever you do there, if you can access those properties, you will be able to access them through this picker variable, right? And in this case, in this demonstration that we have, we only do retrieve country code async. Okay, so TST, a little button right here. We'll click on that, and as you can see, picker will be accessed. And then also, since retrieve country code async method, task method is public, we can access it as well. Okay, we can access it as well quite easily. So this is how it works in general. Now, I told you we'll get into some publishing stuff. So that's the next lecture. The next lecture will be that. And then we will try to make some little improvements to this whole arrangement. And with that said, we will conclude this lecture. Hello again. Excuse the quick interruption, but if you are enjoying this, I would suggest you take a look at my Blazor course, as well as my Stripe implementation in Blazor course. Those two courses will get you started with Blazor, as well as payments with Blazor. Also, if you don't know how to develop a backend for your Blazor client, take a look at my API development course. You will learn how to develop .NET 5, .NET Core, APIs very quickly, very efficiently, with no big struggle. And now, back to the course. Hello, in this lecture we will explore that publishing, uploading part of your Nuget package, Blazor Nuget package. So let's see now. We have nuget.org. This is where you publish it, and then people can access it via Visual Studio, right? Quite simple it may seem, but it is a bit tricky. So you go here, you register or log in with your Microsoft account. That part is quite simple. You don't really get a lot of management stuff. You basically upload, and then you can upload another version. Nothing too fancy here. But you upload it here, and it is asking you for NUPKG. It's kind of a file. It doesn't say where to find it, how to construct it, and if you search for what needs to be done, you might find some rather tricky examples and tricky answers. They may show you how to build it via the Azure DevOps, and that stuff is completely unnecessary. It is actually relatively straightforward. So first of all, we go to Visual Studio right here, okay, and we have our library, Blazor Country Picker, okay. What you want to do is simply build it. So once it is built, you will see right here, you have a package created in basically your project directory, bin, debug, and then your NuGet package. That's all there is to it. But in the properties of that library and then in the package, you do need to check generate NuGet package on build. You do need to do that, and then we have some stuff about the package itself. We have the ID, so this is what people would search for and would find your package, okay? And then we have the version, Then we have some data about the creators, the companies, and all that stuff. And the important thing is license, which you can find online quite easily. Okay, just go online, search for it. It's just a template basically of that open source license. Since it is open source, there's really not much need to protect anything quite strongly. Okay, and then we have repository URL, and then we have project URL. Project URL would be the URL for the website that you might have for the project, which is a very good idea if you want to promote your business or your platform or whatever it may be. It's a useful idea, and especially if you want to collect donations, you'll need that for that. I do have a site for my DatePicker library for Blazor, but I don't have one for this particular one. Okay, country picker, no site. So this is basically how you create that NuGet packages. This is where you find it. I do hope that may be helpful in some cases, right? And with all that said, we will conclude this lecture, and in the next one we will try to improve this whole thing just a little tiny bit. Hello again, and excuse the interruption once again, but I do have a suggestion for you. If you want to improve your C# skills, if you want to learn something more advanced, why don't you take a look at my TCP, UDP, and WebSockets course. In there, you will learn how to handle TCP, UDP, and WebSockets in a very practical way. There's no drawings, nothing like that, no theory. We're just looking at the client-side implementation and the server-side implementation of all these different sockets. It doesn't cost a lot, it won't take too much time, and you will have an advanced skill in your bag. And with that, let's get back to the course. Hello, in this lecture we will try to make a little improvement. As I mentioned previously, there is a problem of the country code not being found, okay? And what happens basically, if it's not found, if it can't return first, it will throw an exception. So there is a simple sort of a fix. It's not exactly a fix, it won't take care of a problem altogether, right? But what we can do, we can try to maybe improve the odds of getting there, okay? And what I will do here, I will go into catch. I will get this whole thing, paste it in the catch. Okay, we have original list, country to lower, okay? So we will just kind of retrieve the first best option. Okay, the first best option. And the way we will do that is by invoking the previous filter. Okay, right here we have contains. Okay, contains. So rather than comparing them exactly, we'll try to do it like that. Okay, now it does not by any means take care of a problem, and I'll explain why, but let's implement it first. Okay. So we have country, and I believe it should be like that. Okay, contains, not exactly like that, but you see, I'm saving time here. I'm just copying and pasting and then using IntelliSense quite efficiently. Okay, let's do to lower, just in case. Okay, like that. Contains that whole thing. Okay, so this is a simple arrangement that we can do. Okay, now obviously this may throw an error as well. Okay, this may throw an error, so I'll do another try and catch. Okay, let's do E2 or E1. Let's start from 0, it will look better. Okay, and I'm going to wrap it. Now you see, in normal C# I could have just highlighted and wrapped it surround with. Okay, I could have used that. It doesn't work with Blazor. Unfortunately, it doesn't work. But this is just as good. Okay, and then we will really return an A. Okay, It's a bit of a nesting of try and catch statements, probably not the best practice, but I just want to show you one of the possibilities in terms of what you can do with the existing code, code that already exists. We all know how to start from scratch and how to make a few things from scratch, but when you work with already existing code, it's a lot more difficult. And the thing is, you will always work with existing code. You may join a project, a company as a partner, but you will probably join, even if it's a startup, you already see some code established. You won't start from new project. That rarely happens. So you really need to practice from these existing projects. Okay, so we have this contains and code. Now I will launch it and let's see what happens. Okay, I will enter some nonsense and then I'll try to enter something a little bit better. Okay, a little bit better, but you can probably guess and understand what the problem here is. Okay, so let's say I do United States. Okay, unite, and I want show. It says AE because that's the first option. So you see, that's the problem. It gives you some value, but it's sort of pointless, sort of useless, right? It's an improvement, but it's not the right one. Okay, it's not the right one. It doesn't make sense. United States. I want United States, right? But if I do that again, it won't do that. See, it gives me this minor outlying islands. Okay, I want this, so I have to select this and then show this. Okay, but it doesn't give me that NA. Now it gives me NA. Okay, so you see, it is an improvement, but it's not the right one. And you might say that it makes the code even worse. Okay, it gives you a value, a real value, but it's a nonsense value. So my point here is when you do improvements, when you try to improve something, you have to really look at it if you are improving it or if you're just adding something to it, if you're just attempting something. Okay, if it won't make it worse, you have to look at those things. This one, in my opinion, it made it worse. Okay, if you want to for some reason avoid NA at all costs, then yes, this is a good improvement. This is the way to go. But in general, I do not believe this is the right option. But I just wanted to show you a little improvement that can be made. And this is a public code. You can download it. You can make your own improvements. You can submit your improvements and do all these different things. So do take a look at it. Do play around with it. We might find something interesting. And if you have questions, do not hesitate to ask. With all that said, we will conclude this lecture.